Welcome to this week's Eccentric Minute, brought to you by Eccentric. Our first exercise here in the Eccentric Minute is the K-box squat. This is the granddaddy of all of them, guys. One that we use at all levels of our training with a vast array of athletes. Couple big tips. I like to use something for our hands to support it. Make sure that strap is completely taut at the top. Don't leave it short, don't leave it long. What I really like the most about it, guys, the isoinertial wheel, we're going to use this with other squats as well. The other squats are working to depth. These, we're going to get to an athletic position and work our way up. Push hard and make sure you're fighting to hit that braking force. As we cut reps, we usually cut depth as well to make it a little bit more transferable to what we do. This is an awesome exercise that I can't recommend enough. Throw it in your training. It's going to be great for you and your athlete. I really hope you enjoyed this week's Eccentric Minute. Make sure you check them out at eccentric.com to find out everything you need about the K-box and the K-pulley. Being a strength and conditioning professional requires constant pursuit of better knowledge, better methods, and better means. But what if there was a place where strength and conditioning coaches could learn from some of the most innovative practitioners in the world, such as Jeff Moyer, Lachlan Wilmot, William Wayland, James the Thinker Smith, and Keir Wenham Flatt? Well, you could find multiple lectures from each of these top-level coaches and a few lectures and examples from yours truly as well, all in the Strength Coach Network. The Strength Coach Network is going to bring you well over 100 different lectures from some of the top practitioners in the world to be your one-stop shop for your continuing education and professional development. So hop on over to strengthcoachnetwork.com/CVASP today and get your 48-hour trial for only $1. That's strengthcoachnetwork.com/CVASPS to get your 48-hour trial for only $1. I look forward to seeing you in the Strength Coach Network. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today we have an absolutely awesome show. This is a live Q&A we did with Stephanie Mock a couple weeks back, and there are a lot of super questions and awesome answers from Coach Mock. Some of these are going to include, her evolution over the past year, some changes that were made down in Starksville, VBT and some pros and cons she sees with implementing it. What's, in her opinion, what does she really need and want from high school strength and conditioning coaches when it comes to prepping the athletes that she gets to work with? And then we get into actionable strategies to increase buy-in and communication with sport coaches, athletes, and within the support staff. Guys, this is really an awesome talk. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Let's get right to it. There were actually, a ton of questions, and there's actually a lot of coaches in here right now. So for everybody that's hanging out, if you guys have any questions or anything that you want Steph to address, fire away. Let's be involved. Let's be active. But while we're waiting for that, let me see if I can pull up some of these because there were some really good ones.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got to take from Clemson Olympic Strength, so we have to take this one.
We have to.
Yes. What is the biggest change you made training-wise in your philosophy over the past 12 months?
Yeah. At first when I got to Mississippi State, it was pretty crazy coming from Clemson. We had a lot of different pieces of technology to utilize there. And whenever I got here, there was nothing, no gym awares, no type of, from an assessment standpoint, no force plates. So it kind of really made me reflect upon what's most important as I started to invest in different pieces of equipment and sell my vision. So my first, I'd say 8 months here before we were able to buy anything, it kind of made me go back old school a little bit, more RPE, getting estimations from the student athletes. And then now that I've kind of gotten up to date when it comes to reflecting on softball season, even though it came to an end, being able to get them on the force plates, do some readiness testing on the contact grid, RSI. It allowed me to reflect using those numbers to make changes in training on a day-to-day basis. So that's where I'm at now, along with Gym Aware, putting them in different groups for training. So some of my juniors and seniors, more of a speed group, and then freshman, sophomore, maybe more of a hypertrophy strength group using the Gym Aware, and then their work sets being set up, whether it's let's say 2s or 3s or singles for the speed group, and then setting that target velocity, let's say depending on the year and the phase, working from like 0.7 to 0.9 to 1.0, and then more of on the other end, the other group still being able to work those kids, but without having some of those different pieces of technology, and using your coach's eye. That's always going to be important no matter what. But I think that's the change that I've made, going from a place of having everything to kind of resetting, starting from the ground up, and now where I'm at now, and then hopefully pushing forward and adding even more pieces. So we'll see.
I dig it. That leads right into another question that was left, and that is, what is your take on velocity-based training and its usage in all training phases in lieu of percentages?
Yeah, so I'd say, from a VBT standpoint, whenever our student athletes come in, of course, we're going to start with our ground zero program. We're not going to throw them straight into VBT just because we don't want them driving from the wrong places, and we're going to be focusing on creating capacity. And then from there, depending upon, just like with my background, whether I've worked with track and field athletes, soccer, volleyball, making sure I set up the ranges according to not only the sport, but the height of the student athlete. Of course, with cleans and things like that, we'd set up different charts of like, all right, for a track sprinter that's, let's say, 5'2" to 5'5", her ranges, and her ability to create speed just with her lever arms, her ranges may look a little bit different compared to like one of my high jumpers that's 6 foot to 6'3". So their charts would be a little bit different just based off of that. And then also thinking about, all right, some of your more elastic kids, some of your jumpers and things like that, they'll be able to not only have long lever arms, but they have that bounce to them, the elastic components to create that speed. So I think that's the one beauty of my situation is I get to be around, let's say, 9 different sports. And from a VBT standpoint, it may look a little bit different. So you can't get pigeonholed and just thinking one way. You have to be able to adapt depending on the day and then the charts and then the kids that you're working with too.
I dig it. So then, how long did it take for you to kind of figure that distance over time and to get those alterations based on height?
Yeah. Reflect back, working with Rick Franzlau at Clemson, and talking with him, he had a ton of different numbers from working with track and field there for such a long period of time. And he had worked with the elite of the elite, Brown Rollins that won a gold medal at the last Olympics, to some like kids that maybe come in as a 3-star and we have to develop them to a 5-star. So depending on the ranges, building up that clientele, and him just collecting data over time, and then me coming in and kind of reaping the rewards, luckily. But I have to say he put in the back end work of getting numbers, and going back to track and field, because that's the easiest way of, with that sport, it's numbers based, is objective. So it's either you're running faster or you're not, from weekend to weekend. And when you're trying to peak, are things working? Are they not? So I think it's such an objective sport compared to other sports. Of course, it's just a win and a loss. So like what you're doing, you can't truly measure like, is it working or not working? You can to a certain degree, but yeah, track and field definitely puts yourself on blast of whether you're doing your job or you're not, because it shows.
No doubt, no doubt. You touched upon it a little bit when you were talking about your progression when it comes to freshmen and then the upperclassmen that you get to work with. But Coach Clay, who was actually on here on Friday, asks, what traits do you want to see your freshmen develop before they start to train with you down in Starksville?
Yeah, so I really harp on talking with parents and things like that as kids are coming up, whether they're coming on a recruiting visit and they're in the 9th grade, trying to play just as many sports as possible throughout their time. Don't worry about getting in the weight room and squatting the whole world on your back. Just working on developing those other ends. So like if you're playing soccer and then also running track and field from an energy system standpoint, developing on that end, and then also like going off that example, developing coordination, and then elasticity with jumps, skips, things like that. So really trying to get them to play as many sports as possible as long as they can, which I get, like they're going to have to specialize at some point into one sport. And then also just everything being relative. So making sure that they can handle their body weight. Don't rush into the weight room. We'll take care of those things, because at the end of the day, like if they're going in movement and it's not correct, then that's going to take even that more time for us to that.
Yeah, got you back. Pause there for a moment.
So working playing as many sports as possible, and then just that relative strength, making sure that they can handle their body weight in different planes of motion, whether it's just a regular body weight squat, split squat, lateral lunge, different scapular patterns. Hinging, of course, is very important, but try not to make it too fancy too early, and then getting that relative strength and work capacity. And then once they get here with us, we'll kind of handle the rest of it. So try to keep it simple as long as possible for sure.
What if there's someone that has a strength coach? What would you want to tell the strength coach that was working with them in high school?
Yeah, I definitely ran into this a good bit, especially with the NCAA allowing us once they start to communicate with whether it's their sport coach or their strength coach, but telling them like, hey, these are the different patterns that we'd like to develop, and making sure that even like coming off of different injuries, you know, because you'll have kids now getting surgeries in high school and you're like, man, making sure that they're spending time with the PT and things like that, and making sure they're taking care of business there. And I think really not trying to push the envelope too hard, like, hey, make sure you guys master, let's say, these 5 things, and then we'll move on from there. But skill mastery of a few different things, quality over quantity, is extremely important for me when I'm talking with them.
Do you have that run in often? Like kids coming in kind of a surprise, boo-boos and surgeries and stuff?
Yeah, I feel like more and more, sadly, you know, because they're playing less and less multiple sports. They're just in one sport since like the 7th grade versus like, I think back to my time, like I was playing 3 or 4 sports and it's like, shoot. So I think just specializing early is starting to create these situations that we're dealing with now. So just kind of seeing like what you can to talk to your head coaches to educate, talking with the head coaches of like, hey, let's make sure that they're playing. Like we have a girl coming in that's a high jumper too, like for volleyball, and hey, try to like encourage them to play these multiple sports. Don't tell them to do the opposite, because then at the end of the day we'll take care of business. But like telling them like, hey, that's only going to drive your vertical up if you're a high jumper, you know, so it's not going to hurt us. And then everything else from a technical tactical standpoint we can teach them once they're here. So kind of having the sport coach have your back in that regard of encouraging them to play more sports rather than the opposite. And that's just for you as a strength coach to have those conversations with your sport coaches on that piece.
Yeah, and that ties in pretty good to another question that was left, and that is, what are some actionable ways that you have found to really help get buy-in from the coaching staff?
Yeah. I think one thing I was actually talking to Fergus Conley the other day, especially with some of his stuff that he's put together from an online education standpoint, of trying to change our vocabulary and verbiage to best fit what the sport coaches use. So like, for example, for us, we use volume and intensity. And for him, he's saying from like an S&C realm, that's what we use, but trying to change that verbiage over to, for a sport coach, more quality and quantity, because that makes more sense to them. So having those conversations with him, I'm like, yeah, that does make sense, and making it really easy and digestible to understand, having conversations like that. And then hopefully from there, once you have the sport coaches, like at least you're on the same page and you understand things, once you start having those conversations, that will build into just making sure that you don't have an ego as a strength coach. Like you're coming into them and just trying to bring value to their program. You're not coming in and telling them what to do. So like, hey, even talking with them about different drills that you're doing at practice and how that's matching up with your training in the weight room. You know, let's have a high-low model, like high CNS day. Let's make sure what you're doing on the court, like let's draw up some of the different drills that you think would be high CNS, and then we kind of talk whether or not that actually is. And then more of a low day, does that make sense for whether it's lower intensity, more volume-based, things like that. So just making sure that you guys see eye to eye. But I think it's really just starting out and having open conversation and just, like I've said in the past, just framing it as an observation. This is something that I'm seeing, not that I'm right or wrong or indifferent, but just trying to have open conversations with them, and then asking for their feedback. You want to ask them questions and know what they know, and see what you can do on your end to help. Because anytime that you're going towards a sport coach and asking like, how can I help? I feel as if, why wouldn't they want you to be part of it, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that what is really important with all of that is meeting them where they're at and being able to communicate the same language. Because, yeah, like I think all too often we like to talk about how we are on the same, like we have to teach them what we're doing, when in reality, if you could just switch some verbiage so that it fits into theirs a little better, it might be an even better move.
Definitely. No, I think and that's what, like, I talked with Ferguson, someone that's been a strength coach and now on the outside realm, him explaining it to me in a sense of, hey, if you just change a couple words, it makes a world of difference, which is true, you know, and they can understand it at a higher level because that's how they've kind of phrased it their whole entire coaching career. So you're not making them get too uncomfortable. You're meeting them kind of halfway and then having those conversations from there.
No doubt. Tony just asked, dynamics of working in high school include multiple sports, multiple coaches, including the high school and club coach, and often club coaches require S&C as part of their 2 practices a week. How do you manage all that? I don't know if you can.
Okay. Dynamics of working, I'm reading at the bottom. Multiple sports, multiple coaches, including high school club coach off. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah, I think with that overarching, that's a lot of volume of a lot of different things. Keeping it quite simple, you know, some time under tension, some ISOs, not too much grinding on the joints, but yeah, it's a lot of different things. And I think it comes back to like, what's going to be the most important, you know, for you as the strength coach, laying that out and keeping it simple, like laying out 3 to 5 things. All right, we want to get really, really good at these. Don't feel like you have to take over the world, especially with them doing so many other things out there. Like if they're already doing sprinting at practice, plyometrics at practice, depending on the sports that they're playing, X cells, D cells, like understanding what they're already getting and then you kind of filling in the other holes.
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much exactly that. Like, that looks like a lot. What are the buckets that aren't getting filled?
Yeah.
And then I guess I would also take that one step forward and find out what buckets are overfilling and find out what you can do to, you know, work around other things to maybe increase the depth of that bucket, right? Like we know that there are different things that you can do, say like specific aerobic qualities that you can increase in a less than stressful manner than like running tempos or sprinting, that can increase their ability to recover, that can increase their ability to tolerate stress, that can increase their ability to move from bout to bout within the bouts. You know, so maybe starting to look at things of that nature too. You know, it's like my gut, as always, is 1x20, but I don't even know if that looks like you have 2 teams that they're practicing for at the same time, and one team is lifting twice a week already. So who knows what they're doing? So yeah, I mean, I think that like that's a spot, Tone, that you could see like some of Victor's model fitting actually, and the stuff that like Val talks about, where if they have access to a bike that provides high resistance, like high resistance intervals, or even maybe doing those as lunges or step ups, the high intensity continuous stuff where they're not going to be running, but able to improve those aerobic qualities. And this is me as a soccer head, reading club and club, thinking that this is soccer, especially since Virginia now, this is soccer season, which is weird to me. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like that's hard, you know, because it's like if you just take those things, if each one is done twice a week, that's 6 days. That's a lot. And if they're doing both at the same time, somebody's playing at some point. So that's hard. But appreciate the question. If anybody else has got them, fire away.
Yeah, I think attacking that low-hanging fruit at the end of the day, because they're already going to be accomplishing so much throughout all that different training. So it's nuts.
Yeah.
Luck. You'll figure it out.
No doubt.
All right.
Yeah, always, bro. Chris McCormick asked a good one. Some of our breaks have been longer than others. And he asked, what's one thing that you've taken from this break that you're going to incorporate going forward?
Yeah.
Or adding or changing. So it could be subtracting as well.
Yeah, no, I think I was actually on a call with Chris the other day that Rick put together, just like a Zoom call of all of us getting together and I think one thing that I've taken from this longer break is sitting back and thinking about, well, coming off this long break, what do we have to put in place for a smooth transition coming off the long break? And we're going to have to communicate on a high level with everybody, knowing that the student athletes only have the ability to do a lot of bodyweight training right now. So how we're coming off of this long break versus any other break is going to look different. So taking the time to educate not only ourselves on that, but just understanding that these kids are getting deconditioned and getting creative with these home workouts of, hey, what are we going to do to prepare them for coming back? But also my thought process is, and we kind of talked about it, we're on the Zoom call, of doing some type of educational planning for us sitting down with the sport coaches, athletic training, nutrition of, hey, what are we going to have to focus on and look at coming off the break? And that's why I got on the horn with old Fergus, talking to him about like quality, quantity, frequency, and then contact depending on the sport, and just trying to break it down to the sport coaches and plan with them what's going to be most important as we come back, let's say in July and or preseason, and controlling. So I know, like, for example, athletic training will do their presentation on rhabdomyolysis, like, hey, this is something you have to watch out for, this, that, and the other, but hey, now it's on a higher level of let's make sure as we're coming back, we're attacking things at a small level, microdosing, things like that, and then getting a little more maximal, taking the time to sit down with the sport coaches and just plan at the highest level at this point, because it's going to be that much more important with this time period that we've had off. So I think even heightening our communication levels with the sport coaches coming off the break and just taking time to educate them, because like this past year I took time, we did a sports science open house with the sport coaches and we educated them on all the different pieces of technology that we had. And I know they really appreciated it. So I think now sitting down and talking about collaborating of how our training is going to bleed into, of course, the practices, but doing it at a macro level of sitting down with all the head coaches and educating them, and then kind of having possible, we had talked about in that call, like breakout sessions of, all right, let's go into a baseball, softball group, a field sport group, a golf, and talking to them about planning even more so. So I think communication is just gonna have to rise like always, but I think just us taking the time to educate ourselves on the situation that we're in and getting the most out of it. And I know I talked with Rick a little bit about the extreme isometrics and finding a way to get maximal effort, knowing that you can't add an external load. So like building it out. So at the end of this training block, they'll get up to holding like a 3-minute ISO, but looking at different resources that maybe that you read way back when, and pull it back out and be like, remember that one article I read? This is what I could really use it, So I think kind of going back through and reevaluating yourself. And I know like everyone's been trying to hop on calls and things like that. And it's been refreshing to kind of get on calls with people that usually you don't have time to do during the year. And now that the situation has come, sadly, it's opened up opportunities to link up with people that you haven't chatted with in a while.
No doubt. I'm going to piggyback on that, and I think the education part is something that, when we start to look at these things and we start to continue to move forward, right? Like, one thing that we can do is we can take this time now to build better ways of communicating and educating, and that's something that we're looking to try to do more of and try to meet them more where they're at, like on Instagram. I think finding ways for them to be able to better understand, them being both the students, the student athletes, and the coaches, for them to better understand some of these things that we would almost consider consistent headaches and why they're consistent headaches, and things that we can remove from kind of the fake confusion of stuff, will then allow us for them to be able to be more creative and more involved in what we're trying to do. I think that all too often, right, we run into these things, and there's too many people who, and then, like my boy Dodkoff says, like the thumb, pointing the thumb right now. Like, I got a coach that allows me leeway 180 degrees in both directions, and as long as we're moving in the right direction, everything's good. But could things be even better if they had more of an understanding of like people know like if you eat like it's a 7-year-old sleepover party, it's probably not best. Do they know why? Do they know why like some choices actually like are bad? I mean, bad's like the wrong word, but like could have a negative impact. Do they know why like even though you've been doing something some way all the time, like eating poorly and not going to bed until 2 o'clock in the morning, like do they know why like things intertwine and why that actually could be preventing them from doing things better? You know, do they really understand why what we're doing in training is what we're doing in training and why there are things of that nature out there? Like, and then do they even understand like the what's, right? Like, I mean, I think that this is a society and a group of young people that have been told what and how to do things for so long that a lot of critical thinking and decision making for themselves has become somewhat limited. And we can now put ourselves in a situation where we can be very beneficial to them going forward through these platforms. And I think that that's something that like we just talked about it a bit. I need to be way better with it. But I think that it's something that like right now we're going to try to get into. And I think that it's something that's going to carry us for a while going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think actually talking with Chris McCormick, he sent that question. Talking with him a little bit, I really liked his one idea. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing them going to an awesome idea. He had mentioned he bought like some of his sport coaches, they'll buy a book for like their team and then they'll give it to the strength coach to read along with it. Ideas, theme, culture building. But Chris had brought up about like him buying a book for the sport coaches there, especially like being the director and us trying to like learn from that book together. So we're learning common things of what we're working on for that year, I think, to drive culture and just understanding of training, then just finding a book that educates them on their level along with us to try to help collaborate too. So I think there's so many different ways, like not only we talk about educating the student athletes and putting together different performance groups and things like that, but also like bringing together, especially when you're working within multiple head sport coaches, bringing them together too to have a similar vision and understanding. Like everyone talks about all the different silos, but like at the end of the day, I really try to think about like us, nutrition, sports psych, athletic training as just all performance coaches. And like, it's not, you shouldn't be pointing fingers at one another. Like I'm a performance coach first, like my number one, like my primary is being a strength coach. Two would be like, okay, we're helping with return to play, you know, so that's working with athletic training. And then three, you're going to be working with nutrition. So like primary, secondary, additional responsibilities. So at the end of the day, once you kind of lay that out from a performance staff, it's not going to be pointing fingers. It's like, hey, we are collaborating and working together. So starting to think of it in a different manner. And then the student athletes will start seeing it that way too. So they're not just thinking that like I'm over here in the weight room, so and so's over there, the athletic training room. Like no, we're continuing to communicate and bridge these gaps more or less.
I'd like to be able to see some of those, Bree, if you wouldn't mind posting them. I think that you guys are probably going to put out some stuff that people could use or borrow or even alter a little bit, because I think that those are things that like we all talk about, right? Nutrition, hydration, and sleep. But like how we would then display that information and how we would communicate it, I think that it ends up being the trying part, right? Because like hydration, one thing we know for sure is that if you don't hydrate properly, like mental capacities and performances go down.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you've got a bunch of people that may not really care that much about school, like how are you going to communicate that? Like why that's important? Like you're going to tell them that they're not going to make as many dumb plays. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's a bunch of things that can be challenging with how that communication goes through and like different mediums too, right? Like social media is great. And we can do things that are really powerful and helpful and we can share them with a lot of people. But you can also have the message get thrown out, you know, you can throw the baby out with the bathwater if you're not having it be something that is visually appealing enough and going to attract the right attention.
Yeah, and I even know talking with our social media people here at Mississippi State, they were talking about just like quality over quantity. So not getting caught up about like posting every single day, but quality content is so important. That's what you're talking about, just like the visuals and things like that, making sure they're high quality and something that people can go and like utilize after. I know like Elon's been putting out some good stuff on their page of just like some of their processes of things. And I've talked with Nick DeMarco a little bit, even like sharing some information, but I think I can really appreciate when people are able to just like share info. Cause that's one thing, like talking with our head sport coaches, because some of them do follow our page and they're like, we really appreciate the fact that in our field of SNC, we're so open of sharing information and trying to get better versus like a lot of sport coaches in their realms, they're not so much because this is like their secret sauce more or less of how they're going to win games and things like that. So I think that's one beauty of our field is we are able to put on different conferences like yours and sit down and really talk about some of the stuff that we are doing to help better the field and create more respect for us. Not to go off on the soapbox, but I think it's definitely a huge piece that's positive in our field, and we should keep driving that and sharing ideas and content. And I think that's the beauty of social media. I know our big piece of our page is just like trying to put stuff out there to get interns to come here. You know, that's like our sole purpose, and trying to show like, hey, we are in Mississippi. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but we are doing good stuff. We got good people here. So like, those are the reasons to come, you know? So, yeah.
No, I dig it. And there's part of me, like the Gary Vee fan, like disagrees, that thinks that like we should put out as much as we possibly can. And there's part of me that definitely understands like that it needs to be good quality stuff. And I almost think that it's got to be kind of in the middle with all that.
Yeah.
But nah, dude, I'm with you. Great question though. I'm actually interested to see how you handle this one.
Right.
How long will this go, and how do we prepare for coaches who want to go 100% when they come back on day one?
Yeah. How long will this go? It's a great question. Just stay in your house and hopefully it will lessen, right? That's what you're supposed to do. And then I think as we come back, I think what I'm thinking about in my mind is setting up a Zoom call with just like athletic training, sports psych, nutrition, trying to get like a front created of like we were talking about the education piece, talking with them of like, this is something that we're all going to deal with when we come back from break, like from a performance staff of, yeah, these coaches are going to go really, really hard, but we all have an understanding that's probably not the best idea to go from 0 to 100. So finding a happy medium. And I think that's gonna be like all of us sitting down and kind of attacking it, being proactive, like talking about it now, getting systems in place. So whenever we do get back, it's like, hey, let's be smart. This is what we're going to do. And it not just being for like one team, but all teams. So they understand that we've done research and understanding of, we want to make sure as we come back, we don't want our injuries to skyrocket. We all know that they've been doing bodyweight stuff for how long. Let's be intelligent about how we go about this. And everyone's in the same boat, you know. If our volume is really, really high, as soon as we get back, everyone gets hurt and no one's playing. So that's not going to benefit anybody. So we got to slowly build into it. I think creating visuals and things like that for the sport coaches to understand. And then just presenting it in a way that it's not us telling them what to do. It's we're all working together, and we want them to be able to play on this date. Like if we get back, hopefully maybe in July for summer too, and we start season end of August, let's say for volleyball, like, hey, we need to be ready by the end of August. We don't need to be at our fittest point as soon as we get back. We've got to be getting conditioned and ready to go and build over time. So I think sometimes it's like, this is our conditioning test, and you have to pass it the day that you return. That's not realistic when they've been off for how long. So let's set some target goals, some landmarks along the way. So when we get to start playing, hey, this is where we're at. We're going to keep on building. So
I don't know if that's going to necessarily be a problem. You know, I think that the NCAA has been doing pretty well with this of late, right? Like they've got like those parameters that you have to follow when there has been a break that they already have in place. I'm sure that that's going to be something that's going to be addressed. Like I don't know why I'm sure of it. I just like with the ways that they've been reactive and then to what the negative things that happened. and have flipped it and are now trying to be proactive when dealing with student athlete well-being after these long breaks. I don't necessarily know if that's going to be a problem. I think that there's going to be some form of guidelines or whatever that is going to be sent down to sports med and us that is going to be like, here's your first week and how you can handle it. And I think that they're probably going to take most of that out of our hands. If not, you better do what Steph's talking about. But for now, I'm going to trust Indianapolis is going to have our bases covered, and they're going to do what's right.
Yeah.
I mean, they pulled the plug on everything else because of safety. I couldn't imagine that someone didn't ask that question. But what happens when they come back? Is it just like, are we just pinning that car and hoping that brick wall gets out of the way? Or are we going to teach people how to drive again?
Yeah. For sure. No, I think it's been interesting just talking with different people, some of my mentors and things like that, of like, hey, what are you doing over breaks? It kind of, I know like one of the questions on here is just stay connected with the kids and just like keep those relationships, not only with the kids, but with your staff too. Like think about it. You go from like being around your staff for like 14 hours a day to all of a sudden like it's all gone. And it's like, all right, you want to just make sure like you're checking in with your staff, making sure they're emotionally okay, that they're like in their house by themselves every day and everything else. And I think it's like a double-edged sword of like, it's not only the student athletes, but it's like the coaches and the staffs too, of like making sure you're setting up calls and staying connected. Because as you sit there, more and more things and ideas come into your mind. If you're not staying in touch with like your coaches and they're just building up all these ideas, and all of a sudden you guys get back and they have 50 different ideas that you could have kind of like just check in every week and see what's going on. It could probably help from that building up too long, that list.
Yeah, and I'm going to actually play devil's advocate to this.
I like it.
I think I'm the cool uncle because they don't see me as often. You know? Yeah. I think that I think it's important for us to reach out and provide some basic, simple starting point type things for these young people to be able to do. But I think that we also are in a time where we really can encourage creativity and things of that nature. I mean, now within reason, right? Like,
yeah,
like don't be a dum-dum, but like allow them to have fun, you know, like in a time where every last thing in their world is going to be an absolute shit show. Like they're taking class online now. They're stuck in their house. They can't see their friends. The only way they can contact each other is Snapchat and maybe FaceTiming each other. Like, do we want to be a burden or do we want to be something that can encourage creativity and fun and something different, you know? And this is coming from the dude who says, we're going to do the same exercises 3 days a week, and you're going to keep getting better at it all. It's like, I am like Mr. Grind, like do it all the same.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's just like part of me right now that thinks like, we sent out our program. That's great. You know, we have some ideas about how we can get some other ideas for the kids to do it. But there's part of me that really thinks like I would rather they coach me on what they're doing than me coach them and have them resent having to come back. Does that make sense?
For sure. For sure. No, I think it depends on like there's so many different cultures within like my setting of Olympic sports. You got teams that like, maybe I got volleyball that I know they like some love, so I'm going to reach out to them a little bit more. But then like softball, I just got done with season with them, so I may be a little bit more hands off because like all of a sudden our season came to a halt and they're already upset about that. So like I'm not going to be up their rear end about working out every day when we just got done. We just stopped in the middle of the season. So I think it depends on the team that you're working with, and you just understand as a strength coach what relationship they need or want, and what they like expect from you from just past time, you know? Because like for sure, I think academia, like them getting used to these online classes, that's going to be number one of just making sure that they're handling that and creating a schedule, but and setting that up. So kind of letting academics take the forefront right now, and we're somewhere in there, but understanding that they got to get used to these online classes first and foremost, and just having some type of routine. Because think about it, we're all trying to figure this out too at the same time. You know, we're not used to sitting here all day at home, like trying to not go crazy, more or less. So we're in the same boat as them. So I think I like what you're saying too, the cool uncle. I think that's the one cool piece that we have as strength coaches is like, we're not the head coach. We're there to support the head coach and what they're trying to do. But then again, we do get to be the cooler end of the spectrum. We got to drop the hammer every now and again, but not as frequent.
But then, you know, piggybacking that, right? Like, we associate different things with different situations, right? Right now, these kids are going to see this, and they're going to say, I got to sit for a lecture. I got to do this. I got to do a paper. Are they going to sit there and be like, I want to take this out too and talk with Jay or talk with Steph? Like, is that what they want? Or are we now incorporating ourselves or encroaching on an area where maybe we don't want to be in, you know, because of simplicity? Like, and then like getting into their phones, is that like having them FaceTime with us and do all these other things? Like, are we now encroaching kind of in the area where they're escaping and being with their friends and their teammates away from us? Because we are in this unique little corner, you know, of their development, right? Where there's so many different things that we can do to help each individual, but none of which may be exactly what is going to lead them to be the best player they've ever been. So if we're sitting here trying to support them from a distance, I think we need to also take into consideration how they may react to the medium that we're incorporating in, right? Like, So I don't know. You know, we just talked a lot about some of this stuff, and there was like some really interesting things that are being brought up around our campus that I don't know what the answers are yet or how you can do it. But even just like training people from a distance to begin with is mostly going to be just looking at numbers and what they've done and volumes and intensities or qualities and quantities, and making sure they're progressing as planned. But do you get to watch it? Like,
Yeah.
Are you coaching or are you delivering a workout? And when you're delivering that workout or you're delivering that program, how can you do that in a unique manner to increase their ability or their desire to want to do it? You know, that's the next part.
Yeah. I know I've even talked with some strength coaches about like, hey, are we able, like, because this came out of left field, right? So are we able to send them all like a small package with like a couple things that would allow us to build out our assortment of exercises? Can I send them a package with like a mini band, a 1-inch band, a 1/2-inch band, so that can allow me to pick from different things for their home workouts? You know, like, are we able to do that as strength coaches with the NCAA and send them, and then hopefully like making sure, of course, they bring it back depending on your budget and things like that. But I think that's one idea to help build it out, because at the end of the day, we don't know when they're going to be able to like go into a gym or when gyms open back up, and every state is handling a little bit different. Of like, California's shut down versus like Mississippi. Not that many people travel here, so our situation may be a little bit better off. But can we do something like that with the knowing of how long this is going to be? Can we send them a couple different things that can allow exercise selection for us to be built out a little bit more?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, I got to talk to Hank middle of last week, and what he said was this is just going to be a test of our creativity. And I think that, like, we've got a couple ideas that might end out being pretty fun. We'll talk about that later. Um, yeah, like I know, Tone, I'm with you. I know some people had sent some stuff home. Budgetarily wise, that could be a challenge, though, sending all that stuff. But yeah, I think that like this is uncharted territory for a lot of us, right? You know, like what we love to talk about low hanging fruit. So let's make sure we're taking care of that the best we can first. And I think that it's going to come back still to educating and then trying to get them to enjoy some stuff while they're at home, and hopefully this blows over sooner than later.
Yeah. I think every head coach is kind of handling it a little bit different depending on their personality. And are they trying to like micromanage them in a sense of they better be working out every single day if they're like a fall sport because season's going to come and we need to be ready, you know, versus like some of the spring sports are like, well, our season just came to an end, so I'm not going to like try to micromanage them on that level. You know, I'm just going to focus on academia and making sure they pass classes with this unique forum that they're now in of online classes. So I think like trying to find a happy medium and talking with your sport coaches and trying to keep them calm to a certain degree too, you know? So, or even like, I know some strength coaches are like trying to get them all to log into a Zoom call and work out at the same time every day. Like, hey, we're going to work out at 4 p.m. every day, log into your Zoom and this, that, and the other. It's like, is that the level, like not knowing how long this is going to last? Do you want to start out your first 4 weeks of like a training block, let's say, or 3 weeks, having them log in every day at 4 and working out with you? Or is that something you kind of want to keep in the hopper in your back pocket for maybe the next training phase, and getting creative? Who knows, you know?
I'd be interested to hear how people are doing that, because I think that like one, if you have a small team, golf, right? There's like 6 people on there.
Yeah.
Are you actually able to identify anything that's like being done right or wrong? Or is it basically just, we're just sitting at home watching them exercise? Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like.
Are you critiquing anything through the camera to a certain degree?
Yeah, like, and okay, let's say something bad does happen. Like, what can you do now? You're just sitting there watching them on the internet. It's like Saw, right? It's like, what do you do? You know, it's like you're just sitting here watching something bad happen.
Something fall on the floor or something, and you're like, oh well.
Oh yeah, or like you see them taking a bad step. Like, then what do we do? Like, there's these things that I think that like we're looking at it and we're diving right into these ideas, but it's like, but what are we able to do? Like, other than to be able to say they were all here and they did these exercises, and you have visual confirmation of it, which is great, which is important, but depending on your league rules and Kara or what at this time, right? Like, and then what do you, now my question would be, what happens if a kid doesn't show up?
Exactly. Yeah. Or like with the online classes, like what are those schedules? Like we randomly had to add online classes. So like what's the scheduling from, you call your academic advisor and you're like, hey, like with your team, what's the situation with their online classes? Is it like they just can log in whenever they want? Or is there like a time block that I need to figure out to like do these training classes? Or like my big thing is like, I'd rather a team be player led. So like just getting the captains to possibly just handle it. You know, do you trust in your team? Do you have that culture built up within your team to be able to trust them to do that? And I don't have to micromanage. Like I'd rather do that like from a player led, not coach fed, because that's how things like for me should be built out. You know, if they want to do it, they'll do it. If they don't, then you're not going to play. So it doesn't really matter, you know?
Yeah. And like, then how do you distinguish things too, right? So like, what you got in your house is great, right? Like, not everyone's going to have that. So yeah. Now what do you do? Like, do you have your Stephanie Mott call, and then your Jay DeMayo call, and then your Chris McCormick call? And then like, and then what happens, right? Like you're talking more about you need to run more. So like, am I running or like watching you run with your, like where
wait the rest, like, yeah. All right, stop.
Like I think that a lot of these are really good ideas, but we need to take a step back and say like, what can we do to be best that's able to be maintained throughout? Like, I think a lot of these platforms are going to help us, like these AMSs are going to help us be able to track more things. But even then, we're just relying on basically truth versus lie.
Mm-hmm.
So my question would be, would you rather have to rely on truth versus lie? Or would you rather show up to a Zoom call and know 4 of the 10 kids just were like, go screw, I'm not coming?
Yeah. No, for sure. It's like, I think too, at the end of the day, like, what if you are watching a workout via Zoom and someone does get hurt or pull something or something occurs? You're liable. Like, if you're forcing them to show up on this call and then something happens, like, risk reward, like, was it really worth forcing them all to get on the Zoom call at this time? But it is an accountability factor. So, like, at least I can see that everybody's there. I think it comes down to, like, what you've built up. Like, what have you been doing as a strength coach? What has been important up to this time? And then relying on those different pieces from a culture standpoint of expectations that you have for them. Can I trust in all the kids? Like, if I have one of the captains of the team say, like, hey, let's all log in and do this workout without me being there, can they handle that? Are they a team of that level? Or were you still kind of working on, like, volleyball in the off season and working on figuring out leadership strategies and things like that in the weight room? Like, can I lean on someone just yet with all the captains and seniors graduating? Like, where's your team at in handling some of these different things? Because it may not be a cookie cutter approach. Like, how you approach baseball and softball may not be how you're going to approach golf and tennis, But,
Mm-hmm.
and, like, I know tennis, like, we still have kids that can't get back to Europe, so they're still here in Starkville. So, like, maybe if we do get clearance that people can come back and work in the weight room, like, are we going to make everybody come back even if they're still in online courses? Like, these are all questions we can't really answer right about now.
I know. It's wild, dude. But I think that, like, conversations like this, like are what need to happen. And that's why I think that, like, recording these and sharing these later, like, are going to help drive more conversation. And, always, dude, I walk away from these talks and you've got my brain rattled thinking about other things.
That's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, it's good.
Positively
it's good. It's good. It's always good because it's always like, it always makes me question myself a bit, and it makes me figure out, the wheres, because we're really good with the what's in the house for the most part, right? It's figuring out the wheres, like where that is actually going to fit or where that won't fit, or where we should be implementing different things right now. Because the trying part is, right? Like, especially like in someone, and there's a few people that work in basketball that are on here. Like, my guys are so used to doing like different things and like stuff that we work on together that, like, it would be really hard to get them all on the same page doing something right now, like almost like a class.
Mm-hmm.
And the women that I get to work with are so used to having, input and understanding of what they need to improve upon, that I think that, like, right now they may have a hard time being stuck in a situation where it's everybody's just going to do this because.
Yeah, for sure.
And you spend all this time building that trust and autonomy and understanding for them, and it's kind of like, when the going get tough, the tough get going. Except right now, you're just going to do what I said.
Yeah.
And I could see there being some blowback with that. But, like, you've brought up a lot of really good points that are things that I need to think about moving forward.
No, same.
Yeah.
I think all of us are thinking about it, like, what are we going to do? How are we going to attack this in an intelligent realm? And then also, like, being creative. I think it's definitely a good time. Get the creative juices flowing on what you can do. And I think, like, leaning on one another too, because we're all going through the same stuff. So making some calls, posting maybe what you're doing that makes it unique, and helping other people pick up ideas along the way.
No doubt, dude. Kick-ass hour. Great to see you.
For
Glad
sure.
you're doing well.
Thanks, Jay. It was fun.
Yeah.
Always is.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you.
All right.
Yeah,
Talk
dude.
soon. Sure. Bye, everybody.
Definitely. Appreciate y'all coming on. Cheers. And a huge thanks to Stephanie Mock for spending the time with us today. Guys, I mean it when I say it. Every time I get to talk to Coach Mock, there is something that I take away. There's something that makes me question what I'm doing. And there's something that's going to drive another conversation with both her and someone else in the very near future. And this was no exception. As always, I can't thank Stephanie enough for her open, honest, candid sharing and everything she's doing to not just make the student athletes that she gets to work with better, but the coaches around the country better. She shares as much information, if not more, than anyone in the collegiate sector. And I can't thank her enough for everything she's doing and for spending the time and being so open, honest, and candid with her sharing today. And as always, guys, if you did enjoy the talk, please share it with the social media outlet of your choice. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be. And as always, we're just trying to get the best information out there to all the great coaches that we can. And as always, thank you for everything you do for us here at Central Virginia Sport Performance. We will be back next week with another awesome guest. We will see you then.